Welcome to the final part of John Emery's Cycling Reminiscences. John concludes his story by taking us back to when he was working with Alex Moulton on the revolutionary F-frame, dual suspension Moulton bicycle.
About 19, I think it was. At that time, I was beginning to become, if you like, noticeable in the cycling world. I was beginning to win the odd race, beginning to win more club championships, that type of thing, and thoroughly getting well known. And I hope in a nice way. Roy and Joan Day, who were well into the cycling world and knew people like Bob Maitland and Shetter from the Midlands in those days when the early days of the professionals, were great friends with them. And in fact, they were the people that used to get me into things like the what we call the chocolate race down from Birmingham, etc., because I wasn't really qualified, but they knew I was good enough. Had somehow or another come into the Moulton world with Alex. They needed somebody to ride the bike. They had a reasonably fast pair of legs, I suppose, putting it bluntly. And I was lucky because I was around. So I was invited to ride the bike. Things went from there. We used to test it down on the Southampton track. I remember one instance which I've written about, which was one winter's day, either the day before or on the morning, the phone went when I was living with my parents then, and it was, could I ride the bike this morning? And I looked out and it was snow and ice. It was awful. I thought, yeah, we want to test it to see what it goes like over ice. And now, to be honest with you, there are a couple of things that I do not like, and that is tram lines, railway lines. And racing in Belgium was a problem, and training, as you know, because they're all over the place. And the other thing is ice. Rain, wind, hills, ice, I do not like. I don't relax. But anyway, we went up towards Melksham on the Atworth Road with a long slope that was a favourable slope, and it was sheet ice, rutted, awful. Nobody else was about except this group of people and a mountain bicycle, and I was to ride this bike. I thought, what are we doing? So I rode this bike and I started to ride it, and I thought, hang on, this isn't so bad. And in the end, it wasn't. It seemed to be perfectly okay to ride over this rut ice. It had a great stability. Now, whether it was because the wheelbase may have been slightly longer than a 38, 39 inch racing bike wheelbase, but it was great. And it turned out okay. So I think Alex was pleased that it proved something, that it had great stability. So I kept on doing this, riding, testing the bike and riding, etc. And Alex at the same time said, come and work for me, at Bradford. And he said, I'll put you in charge of production. He was talking production then. I thought, and looking back, I thought, why would Alex ask me to do production? I mean, I was in the printing and publishing. I could, a nut and a bolt were about my limit of engineering, I'm far from maintaining my bikes. But anyway, long and short of it was, I was still an apprentice. And my father said, look, he said, you're within a year of getting your indentures. Get them, because you've worked. I was well known I had a reputation as a good typesetter by then. Yeah. I was well known, or I was skilled, etc. So I said no. So I carried on. I said, but when I finish my apprenticeship, I will actually come and work for you. So that was okay, because it was that close, So the day that I finished my apprenticeship, I'd already said to the management of my office, I said, my 5 years is up. I should be finishing Friday. He said, you've got to give us a fortnight's notice. I said, no, I didn't. I said, my father, when he signed it, signed for 5 years. He didn't sign for 5 years. I was a bit of a backroom lawyer. He didn't sign for 5 years and 2 weeks. I said, I should be finishing Friday. So anyway, the long and short of it was, on the day I finished, they called me down to the office and said, we were so pleased with what you've done, John. If ever you want a job, you know where you can come and get one. So we left on very amicable terms. Great. And as it turned out, it was necessary. So obviously started it with Alex. And it was interesting because Alex was still very much into, the Mini was hovering very much then in the suspension. The 1100 and the 1300 and suspension was very much Alex's world. The bicycle, I don't wish to use the term a hobby, because I don't think Alex ever had a hobby as such. If he did something, it was more than a hobby. So I started, but it was, I wasn't in a world where I've been working in factories where there were hundreds, dozens of people. I was now quite isolated, because there was the drawing office and the engineers and them making bits out of metal and putting bikes together and etc. I remember the first day Alex came around. He said, "How's it going, John?" He said, "I want to show you something." He said, "Now you know where we met under the arch. That
yes.
Well, that was had doors both ends at the time that I was there." So he said, "I want to show you something." He said, so he opens up these doors, and there in front of me, I think it's a Ferrari. It is gorgeous. It looks about 6 inches off the top of it. It looks so low. The paintwork you could have put your hand into. It was a 2-seater. Gorgeous. And I thought, this is it. There he is, he said. And there was a canoe. And I thought, what's he showing? He said, that was the K1 canoe that won in which the gold medal, it was won at the Rome Olympics, 1960. He just wanted to show me this, because as you know, Alex was very much into canoeing.
Yes.
Very much. I mean, he could holiday anywhere in the world, but if you could canoe the lakes in Ireland with the driver taking the tents and whatnot, I mean, when you think about it, he was quite a character. So anyway, we got into riding the bike, etc. And he said to me, would I be interested in turning professional? Because I was nippy enough. I mean, I mean, no disrespect, but whatever Vic could do at 100 miles, I could beat.
Yeah.
Not at 25. Vic was hot at the short distance. I was stubborn at the long distance.
Yeah. This is Vic Nicholson we're talking
Vic
about.
Nicholson. So I said no. I said because my reaction to it was then lacked a bit of confidence, lacked a bit of foresight, etc. If you turned professional, then you couldn't revert to amateur.
Right.
That was in those days, which is different now. Everybody's just a cyclist or whatever it is. So I said no. So it was quite amicable, but it was decided then that John Pete Woodburn, or whatever you want to call him, would be involved. So Pete came down, and I said, look, he can stay with me. So he actually stayed with me for the first week of his life with Moulton there. So the first day we arrived at the hall, and Alex, we're in by the main gate there where you come up from the hall, and he says, take John. I'm not sure whether we called him. We knew him as Peter, but he later used his second name, John. I don't know why, but I always knew him as Pete Woodburn. But when I came back into the cycling world later on in my 40s, they said this Pete. I thought it must be his son because he was winning races, but it wasn't. It was the original John. But anyway, take John or Pete, whatever his name was then, for a ride. So we provide a Moulton, and on we get, and we stood up on the cranks to go up the slope out the gate, and Pete or Woody, the whole bottom bracket stripped off the, because I think they were just welded straight to the bottom. I think they may not have been through, but so the cranks were there left at about 30 degrees. Silence. Got him another bike, and off we went. That was a good start to the world, as you might say. So when we came back, we'd gone for a ride, and of course Woody was now beginning to chat to me. He said, because I'd already ridden a 10-mile private trial on the recognised course, Melksham to Devizes and back. Good course. Turning at the bottom of Cane Hill there with a proper Roy and Joan. They were professional timekeeper people, but that was all that was there. So it was Roy and Joan, Alex and me, and we did this 10-mile time trial. I did it in 23 minutes and 26 seconds, which is 25 miles an hour. So we were, mind you, the Moulton was good. We had Dunlop tubulars, Campagnolo big 70-odd tooth chain rings. Yeah. It was all good. Alex didn't mess around. He got the right stuff. So we were pleased. So Woody, when he arrived on the scene, said, so I wish you hadn't gone quite so, he got confident later on, but at the time, So we arrived back at the hall after the ride, and now, did you know Woody?
Yes, indeed.
Yes,
very well, yeah.
One thing, he wasn't the easiest fellow to get on with. Wasn't the greatest conversationalist. In many ways, I know my mother never got on with him. In many people's eyes, Woody was not a comfortable person. It was Woody. Woody was Woody. I got, you meet all types of people. So Alex says to Woody, what do you think of it? And I think his exact words, Woody, were, well, if I was you, he said, I'd put a bloody nail, if I was you, he said, I'd put a nail in that bloody suspension, he said. Which I thought was not the ideal way to be starting a contractual arrangement with Moulton. But anyway, as things turned out, I know that Woody, now whether it was, how can I say it, tongue-in-cheek, but Woody then started riding 25-mile time trials on the Bridgewater Flats, I believe.
Yes. Because
that used to be competition record course when Billy Holmes beat I already did the last 56 or 55, whatever it was, on the Bridgewater Flats many years ago when I first started with Billy Holmes, 25-mile comp record on the Bridgewater Flats, wouldn't be held there anymore. Anyway, Woody then started riding. I think Woody, you could say of Woody, he was one thing, anyway, he was a canny chap. Canny, I think, yeah, but I think the idea was that every time Woody rode, he would be paid some kind of payment by results.
Right.
So Woody, I think, improved the results gradually. If it had been me, you'd have had a lot in the first ride. You know what I mean? Yes. Woody did sufficient to keep the checkbook appearing. And I suspect Alex was more than pleased. My only other competitive ride on the bike was a 25-mile, even though I'd ridden my second 12-hour on the local course, and therefore on the Sunday I'd ridden this 12-hour, and I'd been beaten by the local chap, Keith Wright, and I thought I had it in the bag. At half distance at Swindon, I was up on the record and up on everybody except this guy. Including this guy. But as I got near him, his squad were professionals, and they let me get near to him and then took off. So I got beaten, and I always remember Dave Duffield come into the dinner afterwards and said, I've never seen anybody more like a zombie than you in the last 3 hours. You didn't know where you were going. And I literally, I did 252 miles, which was pretty good. So in that week also was the last event for the Club Evening Points Championship. It was the last ride. So Alex comes along and he said, would I ride the Moulton in this last event? And of course, I needed the points to make sure I don't know what, looking back at me, if I hadn't won the championship, it was only another, what the hell? No, I said, I want to ride my Cinelli. Oh, anyway, I obviously had to think about it. I thought, well, what's the point? So I said, I'll ride right. So the Moulton was all put together and sorted out, etc. And off we went. And as I was coming back down through Melksham towards Atworth and the finish, along towards Bath, Alex slides down the side of me with his, I forgot what they called it. It wasn't a Land Rover. It was another vehicle similar anyway.
Oh, Austin Champ, probably.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And he slid the window. It was sliding windows, and he slid the window. I remember he slid the window back. And he said, "John," he said, "why are you not changing gear?" The toggle chain had come undone during the ride, so I was now in
top gear,
top grinder, which wasn't too much of a problem, but obviously I wasn't changing gear. I must have said something which wasn't, bearing in mind I was probably about 20 miles into a 25-mile race and probably well lathered up. And I probably said something like chain rings or toggle chains, and he slid the window back and left me to it. So, I'm not sure, I can't remember whether I won the race. To be honest, I can't remember whether I won the race or not. I really can't. I know I got the championship anyway. That was so that was my bit. I then started to feel uncomfortable with my position at Moulton's because I felt I was all right for riding the bike. I could put a bike together and whatnot, but production wasn't my forte. And I think and in fact, looking back, I think myself, knowing that in the end, Alex did let it go to Raleigh. Raleigh wouldn't have wanted me, under whatever circumstance. They got their own production. They got worldwide. They don't need John who, And I was beginning also to miss, I think, looking back, my days in the printing industry. So I made a decision that I would go back into print again, because I knew there were people who would employ me. I hadn't made too many noises, but I knew people would employ me because I was employable, because I was a good typesetter. So on the morning I came in, you see, and I went to the secretary, whoever she was then, I don't know, and handed my notice in. You see, and I went off. So the guys in the drawing office said, "Have you handed your notice in, John?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't think this is for me, you know." He said, "You can't do that." I thought, "What do you mean you can't do that?" I said, I didn't say something like slavery's been abolished or whatever, but you know, I was a 21, 22, 21-year-old. You know, I'm not saying I was bolshy, but you know, I was pretty hot-blooded. So anyway, that morning went by and we were fiddling with the bike. And anyway, about lunchtime, Alex says to me, he says, "John," he said, "could I have a word with you?" He said, "Come into my study." So in his study, he's got his lovely great big table, and there's a lovely big picture of me thrashing the Moulton along at something or other, you know. The long and short of it was, Alex said, "Can I offer you more money?" I said, "Alex," no, one thing, not Alex, because it was always Mr. Moulton. The first time I ever used the name Alex is speaking in public when I spoke at the hall last year. It was obviously quite rightly so. It was Mr. Moulton. "Mr. Moulton," I said, "I think that you and I will fall out at some point." I said, "And I don't think that would be sensible." I said, "We've had a good run." I said, "You've got ambitions," I said, and I said, "I don't think I need to be involved in the future of the bike." You know, I said, and that was it. So it was quite amicable, but you know, I think because he could see that I knew what I was doing.
Yes.
I'm not sure whether he was surprised or not that the offer of more money didn't register, because I think money was very often sufficient to solve a few problems, but it wasn't. And that was it. I went back into the printing trade again and lost complete contact until, I was it 2-3 years ago now, time flies. I was in Nice. Our group had gone to a restaurant for a meal, and we were chatting. Now, I don't know who it was, but the chap of something or other came up about, but the Moulton came up, and I simply said, "Oh," I said, "I used to be involved with that." And the person, whoever it was, I have a feeling is related to Paul Lancaster. Said to me, because obviously we got, I said, "Yeah," I said, I was involved in the early design. "Were you?" You know, so we got, thought, "Give me your email and your phone number." He said, "I'm not sure whether it was a brother or a brother-in-law," something like that. And the next thing was Paul Lancaster rings me up. Yeah. And from there, everything is as it happened.
Yes.
The next thing is my enthusiasm in Moulton is back, because I was invited up to speak at the hall. So where are we now? My immediate thing was, I'd like a Moulton. Let's be fair. So in Bath, at Avon Valley Cycles, they display some Moultons. And in the window, there's a lovely Moulton. It's gorgeous. Second hand. But it's gorgeous with all the bells and whistles. So I had to go in for probably something like a hubcap or something silly, something. And I said to the guy, I said, Moulton in the front window. I said, how much is it? You see, £1,600, he said. I thought, "Oh, right." I said, "I don't think my Christmas present will stretch to that." I said, but it's a lovely bike. Actually, Tony, we may have had contact. Now I realise that the book was written by you, because I actually wrote something that was put on the board in Avon Valley Cycles with the pictures of me racing the bike. Ah. And I made the comments such as this. Now, I don't know whether you became aware of it or not, because I said, having read the book, that unfortunately it starts more or less at the beginning of the Moulton Bicycle Club. It doesn't actually go back to what I call the heady days of the Moulton bicycle with Alex. And I wrote something to the effect that I thought but looking back, this is personal now, Tony. I don't take this as being we weren't employed, certainly weren't paid, and we were just enthusiasts. But we did an awful lot that got Alex into the where he needed to be.
Yes.
And I felt that the boat, now it turns out it's your boat, didn't reflect that, because you wouldn't probably have known that. Yes?
Yep.
Yeah, because Roy and Joan were a lovely couple. They never had children. And I think people like me were their children. If you know, they used to be out supporting me at races, getting me into races where I shouldn't have been, meeting people that I probably liked, Bob Maitland and Dave Bedwell and people like, you know, that sort of era, you know, and you know, other people that got involved with the Moulton, you know, like Dave Duffield. I mean, it was only through them in the club that, you know, and I suppose in some respect, where the bike is now is reflected very, very well in the book. It's just that there's a whole slice of it going back another 10 years and more, or probably more than that, because say 1959, 1960, and the club started in 1974, was it?
Yes, I wasn't involved in the club in those days anyway.
Yeah, but so there is a chunk of, because we there were some design, I feel like, awful things. I mean, even Alex admits to them, where he built monocoque frames that sounded like a dustbin going on the road. Yeah. You know, I mean, we talked about those things. My interest in the bike is, I've written, and you might like the article actually, Tony, because if you want to have that, okay?
Yes, I think,
I put in there to the effect that my involvement with the bike were very much in the enthusiastic cycling. I could add a bit of speed to it at the time, which wasn't available, probably Alex or whatever it was. You know, I was probably something that was a bit unique and fairly local. And also I had quite a good grounding and understanding in bicycle, what made a bike go. My first bike that really I started winning on was a Cinelli. Reynolds 531, built in Italy, but a Cinelli. Built like a tank. You know, in respect of what the more modern, like, I mean, the Hetchins and with pencil stays, none of that. I mean, it was fat tubes kinked in to get the wheels in, but every pedal stroke you pushed down went out the back wheel. It didn't.
No flex.
There was no. It went out the back wheel. So I knew what made a bike go, and also bicycle design of what suited what I was doing. And I remember the one thing that, and I've mentioned this again, I hope it doesn't sound like a parrot going on about it, but I knew that the Moulton would benefit from a shorter wheelbase from what we needed to do. I know this was a clash of concept. Alex was designing a bike for the public market. I was thinking of a bike that we were trying to make go faster, and they weren't necessarily a compatible item.
Quite, yeah.
Soft suspension, long wheelbases, etc. I used to ride the bike home from Bradford on a daily routine. Up, you know, the hill up from the Swan going out of Bradford-on-Avon, a good start. Yeah. Down over Winsley, then up over Brassknocker. Now, bearing in mind that I was winning championship on it. I hadn't beaten 3 minutes for the climb by then, but I'd won very close to 3 minutes a couple of times the hill. So I was a good climber. I knew that. I could Pyrenees and that I rode going on about. I mean, I don't know why people worry about the Pyrenees. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you ride the hills down in Devon and Cornwall and Somerset, you know what climbs are, you know, up and down and up and down. Once you're on the Pyrenees and in the right gear, I mean, you could ride it all day. Probably wouldn't have, you know, under different circumstances. And riding the Moulton up something like Brassknocker Hill with that soft suspension, and that, I think I use the expression, it was like a pregnant hippo. It sunk. So I'd said to the engineers, we solved the back one quite quickly with 2 ring spanners. The front one, the engineer said, "Don't worry, John." He said, "I'll tighten up the spline." He said, "No, he didn't mean tighten it. He meant deaden it to the point where." So when Alex came round, he would always, grab the old bike by the saddle and go. That was his introduction, if you like. He'd come in, pick up like. Oh, I said, we were just having a look at the design of the front suspension, and I think I said something inane like, it's been wearing a bit, so we've tightened it up to see how the new. He must have realised I was bluffing, but anyway, we left it at that. But I did say to Alex at one point, it would benefit from shortening the wheel. Even I envisaged it. I was looking at it purely from my point of view. But I also could see that it would benefit possibly even from a handling point of view. It wouldn't be so sluggish on slopes for the ordinary rider even. Yeah. And Alex said, "Yeah, but it is shorter than John." He said, "The wheelbase is shorter." I said, "No, Alex." I said, and this is one thing that surprised me, being in being aware that Alex was an engineer, suspension and etc. with vehicles. He didn't grasp immediately that I said wheelbase, not wheel length, not bike. Yeah. And I took the bike and I said, he said, I said, "Look, it's shorter." He said, No. I said, "The wheels touch the ground and I don't." Whether Alex realised that he had walked into a brick wall, because I was right. Because, I'm not doing it wrong. Alex was... He was very focused on things, Alex, and whether he didn't like a grubby 20-odd-year-old telling him something that was in fact patently obvious, I don't know. Maybe not, because as you know, the wheelbases were shortened.
Absolutely, yes.
But yeah. I can't say it's because of I was probably. I think I must have been the first person to actually, I'm pretty certain, say to him, "Shorten the wheelbase, Alex."
Yeah, eventually all these things got taken into account.
Yes.
It was a while, yeah.
Yeah, because I think the first year that we got married, Julie and I, we went to the bike show, which would have been 63.
Yeah.
And that would have been the year, was it?
62 was when they launched, November 62, and 63 was the first year of production.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it was, and of course there was a Moulton stand, but I was there. I don't know why I bored Judy with taking her to a bike show, but because we always used to go there and just collect the leaflets, didn't we? And then go up in the balcony and look over and have a lemonade, and like you do. But anyway, I think it was the last one I ever went to. Not because it was Moulton. And of course I drifted on and I had no contact with the Moulton until that time when Paul Lancaster rang me up again.
Yes.
And I say, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. My reaction to the £1,600 for a second-hand Moulton in town was somewhat disappointing. I've not ridden a bike properly for probably 4 or 5 years now. I mean, even ridden a bike, because Julie and I, we actually had lovely bikes with Shimano 8-speed hub gears. We bought a pair together, and we used to go down to France, into Brittany, year after year, riding the cycle. We had wonderful times. But I can't, in all honesty, say I feel confident on a bike anymore. Now, whether that's through lack of use or my problem that I've got, I actually, for the first time, rode my Moulton Sunday up and down the road. I wanted to see how this 2-speed works.
This Duomatic.
This Duomatic, and it works. And it does work. So anyway, it works. I have a neighbour just a couple of roads down that we're walking. We usually walk together on Wednesdays, and we've threatened to take our bikes round to the cycle track. My Moulton, and he's got a mountain bike of some sort which he never rides. We're gonna pump the tires up and have a ride to see if I can ride this Moulton. So it may come to fruit. But that is my last picture, the only picture I've got now. Believe it or not, all those trophies you see are what I won that year.
Gosh.
In that and that was when I was with the Bath Cycling Club, and I think Dave Duffield may have been around then, and that's Alex was the guest of honour and presenting the awards. That trophy there is famous. In fact, these two bits go together, and it's called the Tempest Trophy. Right. When we were lads and first getting into power in the Bath Cycling Club on the committee, we realised if we could sell that, we could build a clubhouse. Huh. You see, so we started to make feelers out, and obviously one of the older dignitaries in the club swiftly found out that it would give in perpetuity to the club and could never be disposed of. We actually also found out that it was valued at that time as being £400 worth of gold, but the bank would not. Behind it, you see a box. See that box? Uh-huh. That is all that the bank recognise is the box. They won't recognise the trophy because they simply say that they don't want to know.
Thank you very much, John, for that. It's wonderful to speak to you and to get all your reminiscences of your cycling career and your involvement with the Moulton. And thank you very much for allowing me here today and sharing your memories.
Well, I'm, first of all, a little bit embarrassed to think that I'm important enough to record for my memories, but I've enjoyed actually remembering a lot of it myself, because I've had to sit down and look up dates and times and places, and I'm not quite sure that my memory is quite as accurate as I'd like it to be, but I've thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity to speak about it.
Thank you very much, John.